We like to imagine dinosaurs going out in a blaze of glory, a meteor strike, a volcanic eruption, something catastrophically cinematic. The reality: most dinosaurs died exactly the way most animals die, badly, slowly, and in ways that make you grateful you weren't there to see it. The fossil record isn't just a collection of bones. It's a crime scene investigation spanning millions of years, and some of these cases are so brutal, so visceral, that they've fundamentally changed how we understand prehistoric life. These aren't just skeletons, they're frozen moments of absolute catastrophe, preserved in exquisite, horrifying detail. In 1971, a Polish-Mongolian expedition was working through the Jadokta Formation in Mongolia's Gobi Desert when they stumbled onto something that shouldn't exist. Two dinosaurs locked in mortal combat, frozen exactly as they were 74 million years ago. A velociraptor and a protoceratops caught mid-battle. The velociraptor's killing claw, that famous sickle-shaped talon on its hind foot, is buried deep in the protoceratops' throat. Meanwhile, the herbivore's beak has clamped down on the predator's arm with enough force to trap it completely. Neither animal is winning. Both are dying. What makes this discovery genuinely unsettling isn't just the violence captured in stone. It's the specificity. The velociraptor's arm is pinned. Its killing blow has been delivered, but it's not enough. The protoceratops is fighting back with everything it has. You can almost see the moment. The predator lunging, the herbivore whipping its head around, beaks and claws colliding in a spray of blood and sand. Then something went catastrophically wrong. The prevailing theory is a sudden sandstorm or a collapsing dune, a wall of sand that buried both animals alive in seconds. No escape, no final struggle, just instant entombment while they were still locked together, still fighting, still very much aware of what was happening. The preservation is so perfect that you can see individual toe bones, the position of every vertebra, the exact angle of attack. It's the paleontological equivalent of a photograph taken at 1,000th of a second. These animals died instantly, simultaneously, and completely intertwined. The velociraptor never got to finish its kill. The protoceratops never got to escape. They've been frozen together for 74 million years, and they'll stay that way until the end of time. Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, 1947. Paleontologists discovered something that would rewrite our understanding of dinosaur behavior and make us deeply uncomfortable in the process. Hundreds of coelophysis skeletons, piled on top of each other in a mass grave spanning thousands of square feet. A catastrophic die-off from the late Triassic, roughly 201 million years ago. Initially, researchers thought it was a simple drought scenario. A watering hole dried up, animals congregated and died together. Tragic but straightforward. Then they looked closer at the stomach contents. Juvenile calophysis bones inside adult calophysis stomach cavities. Not just one specimen, multiple individuals with the unmistakable remains of their own young preserved in their gut regions. Let that sink in for a moment. These weren't scavengers opportunistically feeding on already dead juveniles. The bones show clear evidence of being digested. These adults actively hunted, killed, and ate their own offspring. Then they died, leaving the evidence of their cannibalism perfectly preserved. The scenario gets darker when you consider the context. This wasn't normal predatory behavior. This was desperation. The drought had eliminated other prey. The adults were starving, growing weaker by the day, their bodies consuming themselves from the inside. At some point, survival instinct overrode every other consideration. The juveniles were smaller, slower, easier to catch. They became food, but it wasn't enough. The adults who cannibalized their young didn't survive. They died anyway, days or weeks later, still carrying the evidence of what they'd done. The entire population collapsed in on itself. Predator, prey, and cannibal, all becoming one indistinguishable mass of bones and desperation. Ghost Ranch is haunting, not because of how these animals died, but because of what they were willing to do to avoid dying. It didn't work. The drought killed them all regardless. The only difference is that some of them died with the taste of their own species still in their mouths. Big Al is famous in paleontology circles, an Allosaurus fragilis specimen discovered in Wyoming's Morrison Formation that's become one of the most studied theropod fossils in the world. But Big Al's fame comes from something deeply unfortunate. We know exactly what killed him, and it was absolutely agonizing. The smoking gun is in the pelvis, a massive puncture wound, roughly circular, measuring about 10 centimeters or 4 inches across. The bone around the injury shows clear signs of infection, porous texture, irregular growth, inflammation markers visible, even after 145 million years. This wasn't a fresh wound when Big Al died. This was chronic. This had been killing him slowly for weeks, possibly months. Forensic analysis points to a specific culprit, a Stegosaurus thagomizer. Those 4 tail spikes weren't just for show, they were defensive weapons capable of devastating damage. The spacing, angle, and size of Big Al's wound matches perfectly with what a thagomizer spike would produce. Somewhere in late Jurassic Wyoming, Big Al made a critical error in judgment during a hunt, and a Stegosaurus made him pay for it. Picture the moment. Big Al closes in on what seems like manageable prey. The Stegosaurus swings its tail, a movement perfected over countless generations, powerful enough to shatter bone. The spike connects with Big Al's hip, driving deep into the joint, possibly shattering the ball of the femur. Big Al breaks off the attack immediately, but the damage is done. Here's where it gets genuinely horrific. Big Al didn't die from the wound itself. He died from what came after. The injury became infected. Bacteria from the Stegosaurus's spike or from the environment, we'll never know which. The infection spread through the bone tissue, creating abscesses, destroying healthy tissue, causing constant, unrelenting pain. Every step would have been agony. Running was impossible. Hunting became a distant memory. Big Al's skeleton shows signs of significant weight loss in his final weeks. The bones are less dense than they should be, suggesting severe malnutrition. He couldn't hunt effectively, couldn't compete with healthy Allosaurus for carcasses, couldn't even walk without excruciating pain. The infection eventually went systemic. Fever, organ failure, septic shock. Big Al died slowly, painfully, and completely alone. The price of a single miscalculated lunge during a hunt that happened 145 million years ago. In 2004, researchers working in China's Liaoning province uncovered something that paleontologists had theorized about, but never actually found. A dinosaur family caught in a volcanic eruption, preserved exactly as they died. The specimen is a group of Psittacosaurus, small, beaked herbivores about the size of a large dog, an adult and multiple juveniles arranged in a tight cluster inside what appears to be a burrow. They're not scattered, they're together, deliberately positioned, the adult's body partially covering the smaller individuals in what looks unmistakably like a protective posture. Then the volcano erupted. Superheated pyroclastic flows, mixtures of ash, rock fragments, and volcanic gases reaching temperatures of 1,000 degrees Celsius, swept across the landscape at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Everything in their path was incinerated, buried, or suffocated. Usually, all three. The Psittacosaurus family never had a chance. They were underground when it happened, huddled together in their burrow, probably hearing the rumbling above them, possibly smelling the sulfur and ash in the air. The burrow that should have protected them became their tomb. The pyroclastic surge filled the entrance, creating an instant oven. The temperature inside spiked to lethal levels in seconds. They died from asphyxiation, the superheated air searing their lungs, the oxygen depleted and replaced by toxic volcanic gases. The adult never moved from its protective position. The juveniles never scattered. They died exactly where they'd gathered. The family unit maintained even in their final moments. The volcanic ash preserved them with extraordinary fidelity. You can see individual scales on the skin impressions, the exact position of each limb, even the gut contents showing their last meal. It's the kind of preservation usually reserved for insects in amber. Except, this is a group of animals caught in mid-existence, frozen by geological catastrophe. What makes this discovery genuinely haunting isn't the violence of the death. It was probably relatively quick compared to other entries on this list. It's the context. This was a family. They were together. The adult tried to protect the young. None of it mattered. The volcano didn't care about family bonds, protective instincts, or survival strategies that had carried these animals through countless generations. They're still down there in that burrow, still huddled together, still frozen in that protective arrangement. A snapshot of prehistoric family dynamics preserved in the worst possible moment. Triceratops specimens are relatively common in the Hell Creek Formation. They were abundant during the late Cretaceous, and their massive skulls preserve exceptionally well. Most show the typical wear patterns you'd expect: healed injuries from predator attacks, minor fractures, the general damage that comes with living in a world full of tyrannosaurs. Then there's this particular specimen, and it's a different story entirely. The skull shows catastrophic damage. One of the brow horns, those massive forward-pointing weapons that made Triceratops so formidable, is completely shattered at the base. Not broken cleanly, but splintered, with fracture lines radiating through the surrounding bone structure. The frill shows multiple impact points, and the facial bones are fractured in several locations. This wasn't predation. This was intraspecific combat, and it went very, very wrong. Triceratops males fought each other. We've known this for a while. Healed injuries on skulls, broken horn tips, impact damage on frills. It was part of their mating strategy, territorial disputes, dominance hierarchies. Usually, these fights ended when one animal backed down. The loser walked away with some bruises and damaged pride. The winner got breeding rights. This animal didn't walk away. The horn breakage suggests an impact of tremendous force, another Triceratops's horn, driven with the full weight and momentum of a 6-ton animal behind it, striking at just the wrong angle. The horn didn't just break, it shattered, driving fragments into the skull cavity, likely penetrating into the brain case itself. The other injuries tell the story of what happened next. After the initial catastrophic blow, the fight didn't stop. The opponent continued attacking. Multiple impacts to the frill, strikes to the face, a sustained assault on an animal that was probably already dying. Whether this was continued aggression or simply the momentum of combat that couldn't be stopped fast enough, we'll never know. What we do know is that this Triceratops died from brain trauma, probably within hours of the fight ending. The bone shows no signs of healing around the major injuries. This animal never recovered, never had a chance to recover. The fight that was supposed to establish dominance instead became an execution. The brutal irony is that the injuries perfectly preserved what killed him. Most brain trauma in fossils is invisible. Soft tissue damage doesn't fossilize. But the horn fragment driven into the skull cavity is still there, still embedded exactly where it penetrated 66 million years ago. We can see the exact point of fatal injury, frozen in stone. The winner presumably walked away and mated. The loser became a fossil that would teach paleontologists about the hidden costs of sexual selection. These deaths aren't exceptional because they're violent. Violence was the default state of the Mesozoic. They're exceptional because they were preserved, because geological accidents and perfect conditions conspire to freeze these moments for millions of years, creating snapshots of catastrophe that would otherwise have vanished completely. The fossil record is biased towards successful animals, successful strategies, successful adaptations. We see the winners, the species that survived long enough to leave descendants, to fill geological strata with their bones. What we don't usually see are the failures, the miscalculations, the accidents. These specimens, however, are different. They're failures frozen in stone. Animals that made one wrong move, faced one piece of bad luck, or stumbled into an unwinnable scenario. They're reminders that, in prehistoric ecosystems, just like modern ones, most individuals don't die of old age, surrounded by their descendants. They die badly, often alone, usually in ways that make all their survival advantages seem utterly pointless. But they left us something valuable, evidence, not just of how these animals lived, but of how they struggled, how they failed, and how ultimately, even the most perfectly adapted organism can be killed by simple bad luck.